In a so-called free state, officials and stakeholders concoct solutions to problems often created by other bureaucrats and with little regard for infringements on the people. These stories are born at the apex of freedom and entrepreneurship. We foolishly advocate for the taxpayer. Brian's Beat presents Freedom Fools.
Hour 2 of Freedom Fools on WBSM. Program that used to be on Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. It's now on Saturday from 1 to 4 in the afternoon. Our Brian's Beat quote of the day: education is the key to unlock the golden door of freedom. And maybe a refugee program courtesy of the President of the United States. That topic is still out there if you are so inclined. There is one that I've been trying to get to for the past couple of days, and I said, well, there's enough freedom in this to bring it up on Freedom Fools, so I'm going to bring it up today. I actually got this heads up from the folks over at Channel 5 up in Boston. There is a coalition here in the Commonwealth hoping to stop driver's license revocations due to unpaid Easy Pass debt. Now, I don't have one. Woman friend does. I've never liked the idea of an Easy Pass. It's my feeling that if I'm taking a toll road, I'm going to pay the toll. I like to avoid toll roads, but if I happen to be on one, it's because I figure I'm better off taking it and I can pay the toll. I don't want the convenience of being able to drive through and all of a sudden click, and the next thing you know, money is deducted from my bank account. I know the government has access to my bank account, but I don't want to willingly give it to them. It really is none of their business. But if I get one of these Easy Pass things put up on my front windshield, well, then I volunteer to let the government go into my bank account. Well, as with everything else that goes on in life, crap happens. I don't know if it's intentional crap or unintentional. It doesn't matter. Crap happens. And in this particular case, here's what's happened. People that have the Easy Pass apparently were not getting billed. And since they weren't getting billed, let me rephrase that. It's not that they weren't being billed, but notices were not going to the owners of the vehicle. And so this one person, Angel, says he had gone months without receiving any type of invoice, and it may have actually gone to an old address. But when he finally did get a hold of the folks here in the Commonwealth, the tolls and the fines, he owed about $6,000. Now, I don't know about you, but if I were told to pay $6,000 in tolls and fines, I might be a little hard-pressed to do so. In Angel's case, he had no idea where that number was coming from because he never saw a bill. He never saw a bill. So he asked the government if he could pay it in installments. He was told no. Not only was he told no, but his driver's license was revoked until he can pay that fine. Now, do you think that's right? Angel is a window washer. Hope it's not one of those high-rise type, but he also makes extra money driving for Uber. Put yourself in Angel's shoes for a second. You have to drive to get to your window washing job. You have your own car, and that's how you're making extra money with Uber. You've got this $6,000 fine, and the government has revoked your license. How do you make your extra money to pay the $6,000 fine? Can somebody explain that to me? Do you think being late, or in this particular case, not knowing about your fees so you could somehow pay the fine? He said he never had, this guy Angel never had any problem prior. All of a sudden, he's not receiving bills. And how are you if you go 1, 2, maybe 3 months and you don't receive a bill? Maybe after a while you pick up the phone and say, hey, I haven't received a bill from you guys in a while. Can you imagine that with Eversource? Even Eversource would give you some type of payment plan, but apparently not the folks at the Easy Pass office. And I guess the folks at the Easy Pass office, they can just go, hey, Registry of Motor Vehicles, this person owes us $6,000. You need to revoke his license until he can pay up. And so what does the registry do? They revoke the license. Now, you might be a little iffy about the scenario that I'm presenting at this particular time. Let me try something different. Let's say your friend next door had a little too much to drink. And what I mean by a little too much to drink, maybe it was a highball, one highball. But that one highball put her or him over .08. And not that the person was necessarily driving erratically. Maybe they were. They get stopped by the police. And they don't pass that breathalyzer. You know and I know they're going to lose their license for a certain period of time. And there are lots of fines to pay and classes to go through, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But do you know that you can get what they call a provisional license? So even though you got caught with more than a .08 on the blow into the tube scale, you can get a provisional license so you can drive to work. Now, if you can get a provisional license to drive to work, why can't you get a provisional license to drive to work under this situation? To me, it's counterproductive, very counterproductive. In fact, so counterproductive that there is actually a bill on Bacon Hill to try to change this. And so I'm supporting, I don't know how much I'm going to get behind the bill that allows folks to drive and that were impaired to keep on driving. I'm not saying no to it. I'm just saying I certainly support the one dealing with the fines more so than the other one. What's your thought? What are you thinking about this? Is the state in this particular case taking it too far? Look, I don't think this guy Angel is saying that he doesn't owe the money. He did ask if he could pay it in installments. And the Commonwealth is saying no. The Commonwealth wants their money. Oh, and by the way, here's another one for you. You know what? Beauty. The Commonwealth, the Easy Pass office, uses an out-of-state collector. They can't find somebody in-state to do this, or are they worried? Anyway, this guy, Angel, owes $6,000. He wanted to pay it off by going to work, but he can't do his Uber job in order to pay it off. And chances are with the Uber job, he could really pay this off. Angel goes, to me, I am the type of person that I work hard. I don't like to live with the system, but the system is pushing me to choices that I don't want to make. I don't know. I'm sitting here. He says he wants to pay the bill, can pay it in installments, but he's not being allowed to pay it in installments. And I got a problem here. I really do. Especially knowing that if you are charged with operating under the influence, you can get this hardship provisional license. It doesn't mean you can joyride, but it does mean you can go to work. It does mean you can pick up your kids and take them to school. That kind of stuff. Maybe go grocery shopping. I don't know. But why is it okay for somebody who has blown a .08 or the blood came out higher than .08 with the blood alcohol, but someone who has fines not to be able to have a provisional license? It just does not make sense to me, and it really makes me wonder how upside down we are, not only in the Commonwealth, but in some of the things that I was talking about earlier dealing with the country. The National Consumer Law Center, which happens to be based here in Massachusetts, here's their statement. By suspending people's driver's licenses simply because they can't afford to pay a parking ticket or an easy pass fee, Massachusetts is punishing people for being poor. In addition to being unjust, this practice does not make much sense. How is a person supposed to pay off their debt if they can't get to work? That's what I'm saying. How are they supposed to do it? Or why do we try to make it even harder? Why do we try to force people on the government dole, as in welfare and Medicaid? The National Consumer Law Center urges Massachusetts to join the growing number of states that have recognized that eliminating debt-based license suspensions is a common sense form that helps people get to work, care for their families, and meet their obligations. It makes sense to me. I don't know much about the National Consumer Law Center, but it makes sense. I don't want to go down the road of common sense, but it does make sense. This guy, Angel, he is back working for the window washing company in a lower paid position because he can't operate the machinery without a license. And he wants to go back and drive for Uber once he gets his license back, but he can't do that because he doesn't have a driver's license. So here's what I would say to you. Talk to your Bacon Hill lawmaker. You may not want to say, hey, Bacon Hill lawmaker, but the bill that is up on Bacon Hill is known as the Road to Opportunity Act. Road to Opportunity Act. It's already been assigned to the Transportation Committee, Joint Transportation Committee. There's no date yet for the hearing. I'll try to keep my eyes and ears open on it, but I got to tell you, it's sad that we even have to go down this particular road, that we would need legislation to pass something like this. It's sadder that the Commonwealth has to farm out the debt collection out of the Commonwealth, as if to say there were no tax collectors, it is a tax in a way, but there's no debt collector here in the Commonwealth to take care of this. There are so many things that are just wrong about this. It is unbelievable. And we let it go on. We let it go on. And one way to try to stop it is the Road to Opportunity Act. And I you know what? I can see the legislature not taking this up. I mean, their plate's full. They've got to do all the stuff dealing with the illegals that are here in the Commonwealth. They have to take care of a budget. The budget process is still an ongoing thing each and every year. They have to figure out if and how they're going to make up the difference between what the federal government is not going to pay to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts anymore, and if they want to keep some of the programs because the federal government isn't going to be giving to maybe DEI or transgender athletes, things like that. And I say that with a bit of hesitation because I know that the state of Maine recently won a more or less quiet suit against the federal government in order to get their funding back because of the fact that they have two transgender males that play on female sports teams. And the federal government was going to chop that money away. Look, I get that. They have a right to do it. I think the federal government has a right to do that. But you don't cut it off right there in the middle of the program. You wait till the end of the year or as it would be with school, the next school year. And you don't stand there at the podium and threaten the mayor the governor of Maine. Whether you think the president was right in the call or not, he was not right to just blatantly charge at the governor of Maine and make accusations that he himself can't stick up for. Oh, I shifted gears there, but I went down that particular rabbit hole because Bacon Hill lawmakers have to figure out how they're going to cover for some of these other programs, just like city councilors and select boards have to do the same thing. And I do believe school committees will have their back up against the wall. So your thoughts on this, 508-996-0500. Freedom Fools on WBSM. No, I got to be honest with you. I never knew that the North Korean national anthem went like that. I mean, that sounds almost deep-throated Russian to me. But be that as it may, welcome back to Freedom Fools on WBSM. You know, sometimes I kind of jog my head with a bottom of my palm slap a couple of times. Why should I expect Bacon Hill lawmakers to do anything whatsoever about this whole thing about the easy pass and giving people that have fines an easier time of it? I think the lawmakers love watching people suffer. Sometimes I think they sit there in their little rooms and they've got flies under a glass, and then they kind of lift that glass up and they like to pull the wings off of the flies. I hope they don't do that. But sometimes I get that feeling. I think they like the pain, they like the suffering of Bay Staters, especially here in the Commonwealth, where they know most of the time they or one of their compadres is easily up for re-election, sometimes running unopposed. So I don't know that this, what's the proper title? The Road to Opportunity Act will ever see the light of day. I really don't. And if I don't think that's going to make it anywhere, why should I think that the state auditor is ever going to get a chance to audit the legislature? I know how we voted. Almost 72% of us said yes, let Diane DeZoglio do her job and audit the legislature. But the legislature is saying no. They're thumbing their collective noses right at us. So why should I expect anything different? All right, let's hear from you. 508-996-0500. Hello.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
You're on point again with several points, but I'm not going to bogart the call here. I'll just say these state people are revenue hungry for all of the disasters that have occurred in the state. They're overwhelmed with housing, non-development, and supporting the migrants, welcome, unwelcome, legal, illegal, etc. So the main problem, I think, is that the governor and the legislature does not really want to face raising the income tax in Massachusetts, so they're developing all of these subsidiary programs and fees to make up the difference of what actually is needed to financially be fiscally responsible to take care of all these problems.
Am I to understand you?
In the streets.
Am I understanding you correctly that you believe that we need to raise the state income tax?
Yes, we need to be forthright about it instead of like raising the excise tax, candy taxes. I got a studio storage space tax. I have to give an inventory of what's in my storage space for taxation purposes, and they farm that out to the local people here in New Bedford to take the heat for it because they're going to monitor all of the storage spaces of everybody and collect taxes if they can according to their rules. So, yes, I think it should just be a simple on the table, not all these complex requirements and default penalties for not interacting with the bureaucracies involved, etc. Keep it simple, stupid. They need money. Raise the taxes. Now, I know the governor doesn't want it on her record, should she apply for another term or a higher office, that she raised taxes in Massachusetts. But suck it up and do what's right and make it simple. Pay more money in one area, state taxes, and not all of these onerous
nickel and dime fees. I hear you. Let me ask you something.
I did want to add one thing.
Hold on. I'm not kicking you out yet.
All right.
Don't you believe that we wouldn't have to go down the road of either higher income taxes or all of these other fees if we could get Bacon Hill lawmakers or new Bacon Hill lawmakers to not spend anywhere near as much?
Oh, yes. Yes. It grieves me that there's no open record laws in this state. You cannot access things that they're doing in closed files, etc. And I think the state auditor is right on in terms of democracy and exposing what vested interests legislators have. And it's a shame the Attorney General and the governor is kowtowing to protecting their secrecy. It's a real shame. We're in a minority of states that don't have open record laws so we can see what's going on. Transparency. Now, if I may, I just heard on the news a while ago that the President of the United States is now suggesting that we should suspend habeas corpus. So,
under what provision of law? Because isn't that a part of
Lincoln himself did it?
But that was during a war.
Under a declared national emergency, like we have a state declared emergency in Massachusetts. So he suspended it during the Civil War. So it's not without precedent in it. But
are we at war?
They could therefore arrest people and they disappear.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have to produce them in court. What happened to X? Oh, well, he was a prisoner. He must have escaped. Or, some...
Well, we don't know. We never rounded him up.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, in addition, with lack of due process, you put habeas corpus destroyed. You really got a super powerful police state, etc. Now, on a trivial side, I heard that on the news about habeas corpus just an hour ago. But on a trivial side,
did the president make that pronouncement, or
they
was it a talking head?
The president said we should suspend habeas corpus.
Okay, I'm hearing two different things. You're saying that they reported that the president were there words that came out of the president's mouth? Yeah,
the word is should. He's not suspending it, but he's suggesting it. The president said we should suspend habeas corpus. Now, on a trivial note, but, it shows how far-reaching this guy puts his nose into everything. My neighbor said he heard a news report yesterday that the president also suggested that libraries support themselves more and that they should charge an admission fee of $5 every time a person enters the door to use it. And if that's not poking your nose into everything recklessly, I don't know what is reckless.
And I don't know the answer to this question, so I'm asking. Do libraries like the four New Bedford libraries or the two in Dartmouth, do they get federal funding?
Well, I don't know the answer to that, but certain libraries do elsewhere. That's been on the news. They get federal funding for different programs that are, added on to what the library does. Here in New Bedford, I'm not sure that there's any federal funding from them. But if the state of Massachusetts is caught in various revenue ways by the federal government, there may be state funding for Massachusetts libraries that will be caught, in the domino effect of it all.
All right. Hey, thank you for your call. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for covering things.
I'm trying my best. I appreciate it.
You're doing it.
All right. 508-996-0500. That caller brought a couple of things to mind. I think the more important one, I'm going to give both of them to you, both of them. So he talked about raising the state income tax. He didn't give a figure, but, he said basically to pay all the bills. I believe that we should have a legislature that doesn't spend anywhere near as much. Same with the federal government. In fact, I think at one particular time, I don't know if it was on a Saturday morning show or one of the Monday through Friday shows, I said, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts could use a good dozing. And so I'm going to bring it up again. First of all, are we better off cutting spending as opposed to raising any taxes, never mind these haphazard fees on the tolls, on the bridges and stuff like that? That's number one. On the premise that you're okay, I don't mean you're happy jumping up and down, but you're okay with raising taxes. Would you support eliminating the state income tax and going with a higher state sales tax? And in communities that may have a natural disaster, let's say we get excessive flooding in Dartmouth, you may need to add 0.25% on your local sales tax in order to try to make up or to pay the money to fix up the problems that you have. So what I'm asking is, instead of having a state sales tax or raising the state sales tax, how about raising the state's, let me try that again. Instead of raising the state income tax, how about we eliminate the state income tax and instead do a higher sales tax? That way, if you want to buy something, you're buying it, you know that you're going to pay a little bit more because that's where our taxing situation is levied. Would you go for that? Any thoughts on that, number one? Number two, I did hear Stephen Miller speaking, and I think I heard it yesterday, so I believe he was speaking on Thursday, about suspending habeas corpus. Now, if habeas corpus is suspended, it won't just be for folks that are here illegally. So I am curious. What are your thoughts? Now, according to the previous caller, the president has hinted that we should. How do you feel about that? I know I definitely disagree. You've heard me mention too many times that even the folks that are purported to be here illegally, they get their day in court in their backyard, not shipped somewhere else to maybe have that court hearing in Texas or Louisiana when they're actually from Pennsylvania or Vermont or Massachusetts. So I'm definitely against suspending habeas corpus. Now, there might be a bright side to this, but I really don't consider it that. It might deter other folks from coming in to the United States, but I don't think too many, and I think folks will just think, no, they don't really do that in the United States. It's America. So your thoughts, 508-996-0500. Hello.
Hello, Radio Land, everybody out there listening to Brian.
Hello.
Brian, I want to talk about the state tax increase in income tax. And very simply, I just expect it won't happen, but I just want politicians to spend only what they have in their budget, to reduce spending to what revenue we generate. That's all I want. Like my house, right? I have a budget, my wife and I. If I go over it, I risk losing my house.
You're up a creek without a paddle.
I risk going without something that I once had. And yes, and that's what's happening with this country, is that no one is running the government like they run their household. If they did, everybody'd be homeless out on the street because they'd be bankrupt. and then, I mean, I guess you can laugh or cry, right?
Yeah, I have. I'm sorry. I am snickering at what you just said, but it's so true. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, it's not that hard to really boil it down to. We talk about income tax, raising taxes, fees, all this other stuff. Why can't the people that are elected, and I'm not going to say I elected them because I think I could probably count on one hand of this one-party state, which is another issue, but we're talking about income tax right now. Why can't there be a law that they stay within the boundaries, that they can't overspend?
Oh, I think there can be. I think the voters would have to vote it in as some type of ballot initiative, and you know what would happen? What would happen?
Yeah.
They wouldn't pay attention to it. Oh, I think it would pass. I think the voters would pass it. I don't think Bacon Hill lawmakers would adhere to it. They look what they're doing about the audit.
The audit burns my backside because the Secretary of Massachusetts takes ballot questions. He evaluates them for constitutionality, whether they're appropriate for the ballot. He signed and approved that ballot question. Once it got on the ballot, the people, there was no protest against the question. They didn't go to the what's her name there, the high court in Massachusetts, and ask, hey, this is unconstitutional. They only did that after it was approved. 72% by the voters. Now, I want to pick and choose which laws I can't follow. However, I got a feeling that I would be held accountable if I broke the law.
You know what? I think you are absolutely correct, and I brought this up on numerous occasions. We've got a president right now. Pardon me for skipping over here.
No. Yeah.
We've got a president who is hell-bent on at least bending what is law. In this particular case, trying to close down habeas corpus. Maybe, I heard it from Stephen Miller. I didn't hear it from the president, but Stephen Miller is the president's right-hand man. So I don't think one would say it without the other, approving. So we have all this going on. If you were to do anything remotely like that, they would throw you behind bars and swallow the key.
Absolutely. And that's why people are misbehaving, breaking laws, interfering with police. We're at a very slippery slope where there's no control. There's no... people are being taught to push back, use violence, resist in a way. We have police trying to do their job. And I'm not going to be real specific, but trying to do their job. And I'm not meaning that it's one of these public incidents, but people coming out of their houses and say, you can't do that, and interfering.
Yeah,
what are we in Nicaragua and Haiti?
Well, slowly but surely, pretty soon we're going to have to escape to one of those countries.
I think it might be all over.
I hope it's not, but
I know.
But we have to do our part. That's the bottom line. Hey, thank you much for your call. I do appreciate it. 508-996-0500. We have to do our part. And I know some of this stuff is scary. We want to believe that we're not a banana republic. We want to believe that we are a constitutional republic. And that caller is absolutely correct. If he were to break a law, he knows that he would get holy hell. He might be behind bars. We have witnessed people getting dragged. The U.S. citizen, a mayor was apprehended yesterday outside off what would be deemed federal property. And the feds came off their property, grabbed him, brought him onto their property, and they've got him for trespassing. I am telling you this because I watched it happen on TV. I don't think there was any photoshopping, and there are numerous people that saw the same thing. There are state representatives from New Jersey who saw the same thing. There are congressional members from New Jersey who saw the same thing. They were there. In fact, they didn't get hauled in. They were all around the same mayor. They had been tagged as protesters when, in essence, the congressional folks went on an oversight meeting, and they had the mayor with them because the mayor's been in that facility, and the mayor says that that facility, that detention center, is operating illegally. I don't know exactly what is illegal and what is not illegal. But again, I think a properly adjudicated what's the word I'm trying to think of? Properly adjudicated hearing could make that judgment. But we're not allowed to go down that particular road. And in fact, the mayor ended up getting apprehended. He was released, but still apprehended in the first place. Hello.
Brian.
How
are you? Was the mayor, did he originally trespass and then leave the property, or did he not trespass, you're saying, at all?
He was allowed on the property, and then he went off the property. He was on the property a few days earlier, so let's say Tuesday or Monday.
Okay, but was he trespassing at any point?
I can't answer that. But for what I understand is he went to go onto the property, and they wouldn't let him onto the property.
Well, I think that's the point, and I think it's because of the way the media has changed, and now it's just a matter of if it's said, it is so. Whereas we don't have everything that happened there. We don't know. We haven't talked to the federals. We haven't heard their side of it. So
we've heard their side. They say it's trespassing.
Right. And did they say it in a court of law?
Do you think this is really going to get that far?
Personally, if you break the rules, I think it should. Is it going to? No, because you have, he's a victim, poor thing,
And you know what? He's got a lot of witnesses.
Oh.
Yeah,
maybe that's the one thing. Cameras that maybe show him walking on the property when he shouldn't. And I know it's minor, but guess what? He did it. If it's a case of he trespassed, then he should be charged accordingly. That's the bottom. That's how America is. But we seem to have one side, actually not one side. We have both sides of politics who want to use the a la carte method of the law, where If they like the person, no, we're not going to prosecute. If they don't like the person, we're going to prosecute them, and that's becoming more and more and more. Let's be honest.
Okay, here's the statement from the interim U.S. attorney for the state of New Jersey. Her name is Alina Habba. The mayor of Newark, New Jersey, Raz Baraka, committed trespass and ignored multiple warnings from Homeland Security investigations to remove himself from the ICE detention center in Newark, New Jersey this afternoon. He was already off that property when they came off their property to nab him. So to say that he ignored the warnings, the multiple warnings, he was already off.
Yeah, but he had been warned before and still came back on, didn't he? That's what it sounds like. I don't know. To me, it's such a minor thing. But first of all, the mayor's doing it for a reason, so he can get press. And then what's the Republicans doing? Or the government, because it's a Republican government.
Well, it's not just the mayor.
They want press too.
It's not just the mayor.
Right. It's a bunch of politicians, right?
But it's congressional oversight. I mean, they have a right to be there. It's a federal.
They don't have a right to break the law.
They didn't break the law.
They trespassed.
Here it is. If he trespassed, so did the others. He's the only one that got nabbed.
Well, they got lucky.
Yeah, I guess. All right, man. Thanks. I hear you. I got to let you go only because I got to get into a break. But thank you very much. 508-996-0500. It is a very thorny issue. We'll keep it going. We do have another hour coming your way.